I never expected a bench to break me. But there it was, carved from solid granite, sitting exactly where we used to watch the sunset over the quarry. Thane had placed it there himself, hauled it up that hill with equipment from the shop, positioned it at the precise angle where the light hits just right around 7:30 in the evening. I know because I drove past it every single day for 3 weeks before I finally had the courage to stop. Let me back up. I should probably start with how I met him. It was late April when my car broke down on Route 9, right outside Thane's family stone yard. I'd been driving back from a failed job interview in the city, feeling sorry for myself when my engine just gave up. Coasted right into the gravel lot of Bridgewater Stoneworks like the universe was making some kind of point. I sat there for a minute, forehead against the steering wheel, wondering if my life could get any more pathetic. Then someone tapped on my window. I looked up and saw him. Tall, built like someone who moves heavy things for a living, with these incredible forearms covered in stone dust. He had dark hair that fell across his forehead and these eyes. God, these grey-green eyes that looked like river stones. He was wearing a white t-shirt and work pants, and when he smiled at me through the glass, something in my chest did this strange flip that I'd never felt before. I rolled down the window. He leaned down, and I caught the smell of granite dust and sweat and something earthy. "You all right?" he asked. His voice was deeper than I expected, with this rough quality like gravel under tyres. "Car died," I said, unstating the obvious, because apparently that's what I do when I'm flustered. "Want me to take a look?" I nodded, and he popped the hood without waiting for me to pull the release. Just reached in through the window, his arm brushing past my shoulder, and I felt that touch like electricity. I got out and stood there uselessly while he examined the engine. I'm not a car guy. I'm barely a functional adult guy. I'm a 26-year-old with a liberal arts degree and no prospects, living in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. "Alternator's shot," he said after a minute. "And your battery's probably dead now too. You're not driving this anywhere today." "Great," I muttered. "Perfect, just perfect." He straightened up and looked at me, really looked at me, and I felt exposed in a way I couldn't explain. "I can give you a ride somewhere if you need. I'm Thane, by the way." "Everett," I said. "And yeah, that would be amazing, actually." That's how it started, with a dead alternator and an act of kindness. He drove me home in his truck, this old Ford that smelled like coffee and stone dust, and we talked the whole way. He told me about the stone yard, how his family had owned it for 3 generations, how he'd learned to carve from his grandfather. I told him about my useless degree, my lack of direction, my general failure to launch into actual adulthood. He laughed at my self-deprecation, but not in a mean way. "You're being too hard on yourself," he said. "You're what, 25? 26. 26. You've got time to figure it out." When he dropped me off, he handed me his card. Thane Bridgewater, Stonemason and Carver. There was a phone number written on the back in pencil. "For the tow truck," he said, "tell them I sent you. They'll give you a fair price." I took the card and our fingers touched just for a second, and that electricity was back. I looked up at him, and he was watching me with this expression I couldn't read. Then he smiled, put the truck in gear, and drove away. I stood in my driveway holding that card for probably 5 full minutes. Over the next week, I found excuses to go back to the stone yard. First it was to pick up my car after it was fixed. Then it was to thank him properly. Then it was because I'd seen they had a help wanted sign, and maybe I could work there for the summer while I figured out my next move. Each time Thane seemed genuinely happy to see me. We'd talk for a few minutes. Then a few minutes would turn into an hour, and I'd realise the sun had moved across the sky while we stood there among the granite slabs and marble headstones. He hired me, which was probably a mistake because I knew nothing about stone. But he said he could teach me, and he did. Every day I'd show up and he'd give me some task, moving smaller pieces, learning to mix mortar, cleaning tools, organising the shop. Simple stuff. But then he'd show me the piece he was working on, and that's when I'd see the real Thane. He was carving a memorial bench when I started. Someone had commissioned it for their mother. Thane had chosen this beautiful grey granite with veins of white running through it, and he was carving roses along the back. Not just any roses, but these incredibly detailed flowers that looked like they might smell sweet if you leaned close enough. I watched him work whenever I could, mesmerised by the way his hands moved, the precision and care he took with every strike of the chisel. "How do you know where to cut?" I asked him once. He looked up at me, pushing his safety glasses up onto his forehead. You see the shape that wants to exist in the stone. Then you just remove everything that isn't that shape. That sounds way more mystical than it probably is, he grinned. Maybe. Or maybe stone really does want to be something. Maybe it's been waiting underground for millions of years just to become this specific bench for this specific woman who loved roses. I loved the way he talked about his work, like it mattered, like it was sacred somehow. I'd never felt that way about anything in my life. We started eating lunch together. There was this hill behind the stone yard, overlooking an old quarry that had been abandoned decades ago. It had filled with water and turned into this unexpected lake, bright blue against the grey rock walls. Thane took me up there one day, and after that it became our spot. We'd sit on the grass and eat sandwiches and talk about everything and nothing. I learned that he was 29, that he'd gone to college for engineering but came back after his grandfather got sick, that he'd never really wanted to do anything except work with stone. I told him about my anxieties, my fear that I'd never find my place in the world, the way I felt like I was disappointing everyone, including myself. "You're not disappointing me," he said one afternoon. We were sitting closer than usual, our shoulders almost touching. "I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be." I looked at him and my heart was pounding. "Yeah?" "Yeah." There was this moment where neither of us spoke. The sun was warm on my face. A breeze moved through the grass. And I realized with startling clarity that I wanted to kiss him. I wanted to close that tiny gap between us and press my mouth to his and find out if his lips were as soft as they looked. The realization didn't scare me as much as it probably should have. It felt right, like something I'd known all along but hadn't had words for yet. I didn't kiss him that day. I wasn't ready. But I thought about it constantly after that. I thought about it while I was falling asleep. I thought about it while I was helping him move a headstone or sweeping the shop floor. I thought about it every time he smiled at me or said my name or stood just a little too close to be purely professional. I'd never been with a guy before. I'd had a girlfriend in college, a relationship that fizzled out after graduation because we both knew it wasn't quite right. I'd always assumed I just wasn't very interested in romance. But this thing with Thane, it was consuming me. I found myself looking up articles on my phone late at night. Am I gay if I want to kiss my male friend? How to know if you're attracted to men? Coming out in your 20s. The internet had a lot of opinions but no easy answers. The truth crept up on me slowly, then all at once. I was attracted to Thane. I wanted him in ways I'd never wanted anyone. And maybe I'd always been gay, or maybe bisexual, or maybe labels didn't matter as much as the simple fact that I was falling for this man who carved beauty from stone and looked at me like I was something worth seeing. One evening in June, we were closing up the shop together. Everyone else had gone home. Thane was putting away his tools and I was supposed to be sweeping, but mostly I was watching him. He'd rolled up his sleeves and his forearms were covered in pale dust. There was a smudge of it on his jaw. He looked beautiful in the slanting golden light coming through the big garage doors. "You're staring," he said without looking up. I felt my face go hot. "Sorry." "Don't be sorry." He set down the chisel he'd been cleaning and turned to face me. "Everett, can I ask you something?" My heart started racing. "Sure. Do you feel it too, this thing between us?" I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could only nod. He crossed the space between us in 3 strides. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes," I whispered. And then his hands were on my face and his mouth was on mine, and the whole world narrowed down to that single point of contact. He kissed me like I was precious, like I was one of his carvings that required patience and care. I grabbed onto his shirt to keep myself steady because my knees had gone weak. When we finally broke apart, I was shaking. He rested his forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," he said. "Me too, I think. I mean, I've never..." I trailed off, not sure how to explain the tangle of feelings in my chest. "Never kissed a guy?" "Never really understood that I wanted to until you." He pulled back to look at me, his hand still cupping my face. "And now?" "Now I'm sure," I said. "I'm so sure." He smiled, and it was like the sun coming out. Then he kissed me again, deeper this time, and I let myself fall into it. Let myself want him without questioning it. Let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. That was the beginning of us. We didn't tell anyone right away. We kept it quiet, stealing moments alone in the shop or up on the hill by the quarry. He'd pull me into the back office and kiss me breathless between customers. I'd find excuses to brush past him, to touch his hand, to stand close enough to feel his warmth. It was intoxicating and terrifying and absolutely perfect. My parents noticed something was different. I was happier, lighter, actually excited to go to work every day. My mum asked if I'd met someone and I said maybe, not ready to have that conversation yet. Thane's family knew he was gay, had known since he was in high school, but he said he wanted to take things slow with me. Let me figure out my own stuff before we went public. I loved him for that, for giving me space while also being exactly what I needed. We spent the 4th of July together, just the two of us. We hiked up to the quarry after dark with a blanket and a 6-pack of beer, and watched fireworks from the neighbouring town light up the sky. Between the bursts of colour, he held my hand, and I felt more at home than I'd ever felt anywhere. "I'm falling in love with you," I told him. The words just came out, unplanned and raw and true. He turned to look at me. Nem, his face illuminated by a shower of gold sparks. "I'm already there, Everett. I've been there for a while." We made love for the first time that night, on that blanket under the stars, and it was awkward and fumbling and absolutely perfect. He was patient with me, showing me what he liked, asking what I wanted, making sure I was okay every step of the way. Afterward, we lay tangled together, and I felt like I'd finally found the thing I'd been missing my whole life. Summer turned into fall. I enrolled in some online classes thinking maybe I could figure out a career path that actually interested me. Thane encouraged me, told me I was smart and capable and could do anything I set my mind to. I started believing him, started believing in myself. We told my parents in September. We drove over for Sunday dinner and I held his hand under the table and said, "Mum, Dad, this is Thane. He's my boyfriend." My mum cried, but in a good way. My dad shook Thane's hand and said, "You treat my son right." And Thane said, "Yes, sir, I will." And that was that. They loved him. How could they not? Everything was perfect. That's what I thought. Everything was finally, impossibly perfect. Then October came, and with it, the diagnosis. Thane's father had a stroke, massive and devastating. He survived, but the recovery was going to be long and complicated. The stone yard was too much for Thane to handle alone, especially with his dad needing constant care. His mum was overwhelmed. His younger sister was still in college. The whole family was fracturing under the weight of it. Thane started pulling away, not intentionally. I don't think, but he was drowning in responsibility and didn't know how to ask for help. He'd work 12-hour days, then go home to help his mum with his dad. We barely saw each other. When we did, he was exhausted and distant. The light had gone out of his eyes. "Let me help," I kept saying. "Please, let me do something." "You are helping," he'd say, "just by being here." But I wasn't really. I was watching him disappear into his obligations and I didn't know how to pull him back. In November, we had our first real fight. I'd planned a weekend away, just the two of us, thinking we needed time to reconnect. I'd booked a cabin in the mountains, used money I didn't really have. When I told him about it, he looked at me like I'd suggested we fly to Mars. "I can't just leave, Everett, you know that. For 2 days. Just 2 days to breathe. My father had a stroke. My mum needs me. The business needs me. I can't just abandon them for a romantic getaway. I'm not asking you to abandon anyone. I'm asking you to take care of yourself for once, to take care of us." "There is no us if I lose everything else," he snapped. Then, seeing my face, he softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I can't do this right now." I cancelled the cabin. We didn't talk about it again, but something had shifted between us. A crack had formed and I didn't know how to fix it. December was worse. Thane barely had time to see me at all. I still worked at the stone yard, but he treated me like any other employee, professional and distant. I missed him so much it physically hurt. I missed his laugh, his touch, the way he used to look at me like I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. On Christmas Eve, I went to his house. His mum answered the door and hugged me, told me how much they appreciated everything I'd been doing at the yard. I asked if I could see Thane. She looked sad. "He's in the workshop out back," she said. "But Everett, honey, he's not himself right now. Be patient with him." I found him in the old barn behind the house that he'd converted into a personal studio. He was working on something, a large piece of granite, but he'd draped a tarp over it when I walked in. "Hey," I said. "Hey." He didn't look at me, just kept organising his tools. "I miss you," I said, my voice breaking. "Thane, I miss you so much." "I know, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just talk to me. Let me in. He finally looked up. And I saw how tired he was, how much weight he'd lost, how much he was hurting. I don't know if I can do this, Everett. My heart stopped. Do what? This. Us. I can't be what you need right now. I can barely take care of my family and the business. I don't have anything left to give you. I'm not asking you to give me anything. I just want to be here with you, through this. It's not fair to you. Let me decide what's fair to me. He shook his head. I think we need to take a break just until things settle down. I felt like he'd punched me. A break. I'm sorry. I can't breathe, Everett. I can't think. And every time I see you, I feel guilty that I'm not giving you what you deserve. What I deserve is you, I said. That's all I want. I can't be that person right now. I left. I didn't know what else to do. I got in my car and drove, and somehow I ended up at the quarry. I hiked up to our spot in the dark and I sat there and cried. I cried for Thane and his father and the unfairness of it all. I cried for us, for the perfect summer we'd had and the future I'd imagined. I cried until I had nothing left. I didn't go back to the stone yard. I couldn't. I got a job at a coffee shop in town, something mindless that paid the bills. I avoided Route 9. I avoided anywhere I might run into Thane. It hurt too much to see him and not be with him. January dragged by. Then February. I was numb, going through the motions of life. My parents worried. My friends, the few I had, told me to move on. But how do you move on from someone who changed everything about who you are? In March, my mum mentioned that she'd seen Thane at the grocery store. He'd asked about me. She'd told him I was doing fine, even though I wasn't, even though I was falling apart in slow motion. Then in April, exactly 1 year after we'd met, I drove past the stone yard on my way to somewhere else. And I saw it. The bench, sitting on the hill overlooking the quarry, right where we used to eat lunch together. I pulled over, my hands shaking. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Carved from solid granite, smooth and perfect, with roses along the back. Detailed, intricate roses that looked like they might bloom if you waited long enough. In the centre of the backrest, carved in elegant script, were 2 words, Our Place. I sat in my car staring at it for a long time. Then I got out and walked up the hill. Up close, it was even more stunning. I ran my fingers over the carved petals, the smooth seat, the precision of every line. This had taken weeks to carve, maybe months. Thane had made this. For us, for me. I sat down on the bench and I understood. This was his apology, his love letter, his way of saying everything he couldn't say with words. He'd carved our story into stone, made it permanent, made it real. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and there he was, walking up the hill, looking nervous and hopeful and terrified all at once. Hi, he said. Hi. You found it. Kind of hard to miss. He sat down next to me, leaving a careful distance between us. I'm sorry, Everett, for everything, for pushing you away, for making you feel like you weren't important. You were always important. You were the most important thing. Then why? My voice cracked. Why did you shut me out? Because I was scared. Yeah, because I was drowning and I thought I had to do it alone. Because I'm an idiot who didn't realize that letting you help was exactly what I needed. He gestured at the bench. I started carving this in January. Every night after work, I'd come out here and work on it. It helped me think, helped me process everything. And every single cut I made, I was thinking about you, about us, about how much I'd screwed up. I touched the carved roses. It's beautiful. You're beautiful, and I love you. I never stopped loving you, not for a single second. I looked at him, really looked at him. He looked better than he had in months. Still tired, but there was light in his eyes again. Hope. How's your dad? I asked. Better, getting better. He's doing physical therapy. It's slow, but he's making progress. And I hired 2 more people at the yard. I can't do it all alone. I know that now. I'm glad. Everett, I know I hurt you. I know I have no right to ask you for another chance. But I'm asking anyway, because this past year with you was the best year of my life, and these past few months without you have been the worst. I want to sit on this bench with you every evening and watch the sunset. I want to build a life with you, if you'll let me. I felt tears on my cheeks. I was so angry at you. I know, you should be. But I never stopped loving you either, not even when I wanted to. He reached for my hand, tentative, and I let him take it. His palm was rough and warm and familiar. So what do you say? Can we try again? I looked out at the quarry, at the blue water reflecting the sky, at the granite walls that had been here for millions of years and would be here for millions more. I thought about permanence and patience, and the way love sometimes requires both. Yeah, I said. Yeah, we can try again. He pulled me close and kissed me, soft and sweet and full of promise. And sitting there on that bench he'd carved from stone, on the hill where we'd fallen in love, I felt something settle in my chest, something that felt like coming home. We still sit there most evenings, Thane and me. We bring dinner and watch the sun go down over the quarry. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we just sit in comfortable silence. The bench has weathered a year of seasons now, rain and snow and summer heat, but it hasn't changed. It's still perfect, still solid, still exactly what it was meant to be. Just like us, I guess. We've weathered our own storms, we've learned how to hold on and when to ask for help. We've learned that love isn't just the easy moments, it's also the hard ones. It's choosing each other even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Thane's teaching me to carve. I'm not very good yet, but I'm learning. He says I have potential. He says I see the shapes in the stone. I think he's being generous, but I love him for it anyway. Last week, he showed me a new piece he's working on. 2 figures, carved from a single piece of marble holding each other. Their features are still rough, undefined, but you can see the love in the way they lean together, the way they support each other's weight. It's us, he said, or it will be when it's finished. I kissed him, there in the dusty workshop with stone chips in our hair and the smell of granite all around us. It's already us, I said, and it's already perfect. Because that's the thing about love I've learned. It doesn't have to be perfect to be real. It just has to be true. And this, what we have, it's the truest thing I've ever known, written in stone.